Testing.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Jacklin, and I will be our chairperson for today's service. Are there any visitors or new students and families here this morning? First, we will have Sutra chanting. Please join in the reading of Sambujo on page 24 in the big book, followed by Sanbutsuge on page 22 in the little book and page 79 in the big book.
This occasion of the Eitaikyo service, the members of the Sanbutsuge Betsuin Dharma School have reverently come before me, the Buddha, with deepest reverence and thankfulness for the all-embracing wisdom and compassion of Amida. We reaffirm the three homages. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. 샤니 징아즈마니 셴코 엔요 가이시즈 옴페 연야 그 주모 그녀라이요겐 조세문인 숑아 그나이온 고르지뽀 가이몬 쇼진 삼마이지에 이동음흐려 쇼쇼케 의진 다이센넨 쇼부츠호 가인구진진노 금옹아이 다이무묘요 근읍 세손요문인 노시시 진동음으려 금응호나이 지에진묘 고묘이소 신노다이생강아사뭇 자이쇼호가도쇼지 미풍에 나즈흐세조임 가인인 쇼진 요세 삼마이 지에이조고세 동음은 응여싱안 이사이 궁급 이사다이안 계시음은 양우센 노그만버려나이쇼 춘영호자쿠요 이사이 식도쇼무즈흔영근업 겐쇼흥야그인용모자 쇼무즈생하이부흥앙에 무슈세츠노고묘시쇼 헨시쇼 공근요세쇼진 이진난료 룡아사무츠모쿠노 나이이치 모슈키묘 도조조세츠 공군요 나이온 니무토송아토 아이민 너나츠 이사이지 뽀라이쇼 신네츠 쇼조 이통아국 게나쿠 안농호무츠 신묘 쟁아신쇼 호승안노히 니키쇼쇼요 그짐모세손 지에뭉에 조료시손 칭아신욕 계료신심 쇼크노 그즉 강요쇼진 낸정에 나만남은 나만남
Now we will have Gatha, Life of Shinran on page 128 in the yellow book, followed by the golden chain located on page 2 in the little book and page 15 in the big book under golden chain 1.
Wait now. What the, where are we? This book, right? Okay, Life of Shinran, this book. So there's not 128 pages in the book? Yeah, so it's labeled in the upper left-hand corner. So it's about 5 pages in. Okay, Life of Shinran. Mr. Moss likes these kind of difficult ones. As a young boy, Matsuaka Maru lost his parents at the age of 9. Orphan he became a monk. Difficult practice, meditation, each and every day, did not find a pathway to could follow, left seek a better way. Zen met master's teacher, Onen, learned about the Sanbutsuge. Shinran spread this pure land teaching, meant for all and me. Amrita's precious, live for you and me.
The golden chain. I am a link in Amida's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. I will keep my link bright and strong. I will be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. I will think pure and beautiful thoughts, say pure and beautiful words, and do pure and beautiful deeds. May every link in Amida's golden chain of love be bright and strong, and may we all attain perfect peace. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida
Namo
Butsu.
Amida Butsu. Namo.
Now we will have a Dharma lesson by Rinban Sakamoto.
Good morning. Welcome to this morning's service. Today is Eitaikyo. It is a major service of our tradition. Eitaikyo reminds us of how we need to provide for the continual chanting of sutras. Now, it doesn't mean that we're continuously chanting, but what it suggests is that we provide a place and a time and a gathering of people that can return to the temple and be mindful of the sutras that have been passed down over the centuries. If we didn't have a temple, of course, we would be able to still chant sutras as they did in Shakyamuni Buddha's time. Well, not in Shakyamuni Buddha's time, because Shakyamuni Buddha's time was when the sutras were being shared. It was after Shakyamuni Buddha that we began to chant these sutras that have been now handed down so many centuries. But to be able to continue that, to have a place, that we can gather together and we can share in the teachings of the Buddha, that's what the Eitaikyo service is about. One of the things that we kind of tend to focus on at Eitaikyo is to be able to have a place like this Hondo. So we have a Eitaikyo fund that helped to refurbish the Onaijin at our centennial many, many years ago now. But when we refurbished the Onaijin and put new things into the Onaijin, part of the Eitaikyo fund was used to do that. The Eitaikyo Fund also helps to make sure that if there's any major repairs that we have to do to the Hondo, that we'll be able to do that. We can have the funds ready to make that possible. Eitaikyo assures that we're able to continue to hear the teachings of the Buddha. When we think about our life and hearing the teachings of the Buddha, there are so many things that we can think about that the Buddha's teachings can help us to experience, help us to understand. But it's not just in our time, right? This has been going on for a very long time. Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings have come to us for over 2,500 years. And in that time, if we think 10 years back, or 50 years back, 100 years back, 1,000 years back, the kinds of questions that Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings existed throughout all of that time. It wasn't as if we suddenly have these questions that Shakyamuni Buddha was talking about 2,500 years ago. So we have to kind of preserve this teaching so that others in the future can have hear the teachings of the Buddha. It's people of the past, people 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, who held these similar kinds of services so that we would be able to hear the teachings of the Buddha. And so it's not just us kind of making this possible for people of the future, but people of the past have conducted these kinds of services or activities to help us here now hear the teachings of the Buddha. So as we think about what we might be able to help people of the future, we should be mindful of those who in the past have helped to assure the opportunity for us to hear the teachings. And certainly, since the time of Shakyamuni Buddha, in a sense, the original Eitaikyo person, sharing the teachings of the Buddha so that people could hear, sharing his understanding of what we might be able to do to live our lives in a way that can be meaningful, live our lives in a way that is at peace, harmony with the world around us, that we're not kind of banging against life around us, but that we can step back, sit quietly, and enjoy what we are experiencing, and share with others what we are experiencing as Buddhists. Today, this Eitaikyo service, to continue the chanting of sutra, I guess it's perpetually, so indefinitely, into the future. But it's also a time to think about how we are able to now hear the teachings of the Buddha. And it is because of the efforts of others that we are able to sit and hear the teachings of the Buddha. So this Eitaikyo service, opportunity for us to understand this relationship that we share with the Buddha that has come down through the centuries and made possible by the work and the compassion of many people before us. And with gratitude, we simply respond and we say, Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you that I too am able to hear the teachings of the Buddha. I too am able to begin to understand what I am experiencing as a human being. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you to Rinban Sakamoto. We will now have Gatha farewell on page 45, followed by the promise located on page 5 in the little book and page 15 in the big book.
Okay, Mr. Moss had to go to class, so we're on our own. This is something, a Gatha, that we are all familiar with and love. Okay? Is somebody here? No? I saw Mr. Moss going that way, so I assumed he went to class. Okay. Dharma school is over for another day. Let us gather round the shrine, bow our heads and say, thank you, teacher, for your help. Thank you, everyone. Buddha's love will keep us safe till our work is done. So we'll meet again next week. Won't you take good care? Let us try to do what's right, always kind and fair. We shall spread the happiness faith in Buddha brings. Now it's time to say goodbye till we meet again. Namu Amida Butsu, sing this fine refrain. Namu Amida Butsu, sunny day or rain. Namu Amida Butsu, strong in faith remain. Namu Amida Butsu, till we meet again.
The promise. We thank the Buddha for showing us the way of freedom.
We will endeavor to walk in his noble path every day of our lives.
Namo Amida Butsu.
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 Namo Amida Butsu. Namo.
Thank you to Rinban Sakamoto and Minister's Assistant, Ms. Tanabe. And to organist, Mr. Nishimura. Are there any announcements? Before everyone leaves the temple, please straighten all the books for the next service. Those of you who are interested are welcome to attend the adult English service following this service or to visit the Open Door Cafe outside. For your safety, please obey the crossing guards and look both ways before crossing the street. Thank you for attending today's service.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's service, our Eitaikyo service. Let's see. First, I'd like to welcome everybody, and before this morning's service, I remind you to turn off your phones if you have them on, and there is no food or drink in the hondo. Are there any visitors today's service? Okay, you've all been here. Well, welcome back at this point. First, we'll begin our morning service with open meditation, and then we will have sutra chanting Sanbutsuge on page 77 in the large book, and the small service book is on page 22.
this occasion of the San Jose Buddhist Church Betsuin Eitaikyo service, the members of the Betsuin have reverently come before me, the Buddha, with deepest reverence and thankfulness for the all-embracing wisdom and compassion of Amida. We reaffirm the three homages. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Munyo
Okay, please rise for Shinran Sama on page 86 in the small book.
Okay. Let's see. I think that's going to be different. Yeah, Shinran-sama is also in the larger book, I think. Yeah, everybody got a, okay? Because we're singing a cappella, so everybody needs to have. Okay? Okay. そよ風渡る朝の窓働く手のひら合わせつつ南無阿弥陀仏唱えれば親鸞様はにこやかに私の隣にいらっしゃるきらめく夜空星の影嵐に消えても隠れても南無阿弥陀仏唱えれば親鸞様はのもしびを私の手を手にかざされるこの世の旅の明け暮れに寂しい命を嘆くとき南無阿弥陀仏唱えれば親鸞様は寄り添って私の手を取り歩まれる Will you please join in the reading now of the three treasures? I was going to say page 8 in the large book, but let's read the three treasures since you have it in hand in the small Dharma School service book on page 3 in the small Dharma School service book. So the reason we kind of changed to the larger service book, it was because of this, in the middle section, I take refuge in Sangha. May we all together become unity, true God, and love, harmony, in the spirit of universal brotherhood. And so rather than brotherhood, in the larger service book, it says universal, let me see, oneness. I think it says universal oneness. Let's see. In the life of harmony, yeah, in universal oneness. So, although it's a little different from the large service book, when we read that last, I take refuge in Sangha, let's say in the spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Okay? I know we ought to get markers and cross that out and write it in, because I'm going to come to that line. My head is so into reading this earlier version of the Three Treasures that the words kind of just coming out without my thinking, which is not a good idea. But okay, so the universal oneness, okay? All right. Hard is it to be born into human life? Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One? Now we hear it. If we do not deliver ourselves in the present life, no hope that there is that we shall be freed from suffering and sorrow in the ocean of birth and death. Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in Buddha. May we all together absorb into ourselves the principle of your way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves the supreme will. I take refuge in Dharma. May we all together be submerged in the depth of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in Sangha. May we all together become units in true accord in your life of harmony, in a spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through ages of myriads of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you for doing that. It was brought to our attention a while ago. This is several years ago, and so we started using that Three Treasures in the large service book. But it's, and I think, it's something that we should have been mindful of when we're using gender-specific terms in our, when we started to write these things many decades ago. And now we are in a time where we should be mindful of these gender kind of specific or gender identity, the language, that to be more inclusive, that we should be mindful of that. And so when that was brought to our attention, we said, okay, let's use this other Three Treasures, and which is not, does not have gender-specific language in it. And it was a reminder for us within our organization that these are the kinds of things that we should be mindful of, that we should make changes so that not just to accommodate our current time, but certainly that these concerns are a part of who we are as human beings, that we should be mindful of how people refer to themselves, and as an organization, how the language of our tradition conveys. And I think what's interesting in Japanese language, Japanese tends not to be gender specific. There's no, I guess it's in the context of the language, but there's, it tends not to be, even the noun often is left out of a statement or the reference to an individual. So when we began to write material in English, I think we adopted kinds of practices that were common at the time, religious references that were common at the time when we were beginning to translate from Japanese into English, or beginning to write material in English. And so when you sing some of the gathas, it has a very Western kind of language. I mean, Western English is Western, but a very Western religious language is expressed. You see thy and thine and those kinds of phrases in some of the gathas. Even some of the gathas have a very Western religious, again, melody to the song. One in particular was very Western religious in its sound. And so when we take into consideration when these gathas, as well as the writings, readings were being compiled, this is the turn of the last century when Jodo Shinshu was being introduced into the West, and the effort was being made to make Jodo Shinshu available to a broader Western world. And to do that, English, it needed to be kind of couched in the English language, and because that's what would be listened to. And so in that effort, the religious language of that time was used to kind of write these songs, write these readings, or translations of these readings. And so we see in those kinds of not inconsistencies, it was consistent at that time, but certainly things that are perhaps quite different now in our time. Today is Eitaikyo. And Eitaikyo literally means perpetual reading of sutra. It is a service that kind of we gather together to be mindful of how we need to take steps to be sure that our teachings are carried on into the future. And so things like this, even this language that we have as a part of the teaching, this is something that we carry forward, but we also are mindful of what we're passing forward, what we're moving down the line. And mindful of that, we have these services that kind of assure that the teachings don't stop with us, that we are able to provide opportunities for us to gather together, to hear, to share in the Dharma, and to appreciate and enjoy the Dharma, but also to pass it on. So Eitaikyo service, sometimes that's what we focus on, but it's also things like we have our Eitaikyo fund, I guess is what it's called. But in the Eitaikyo fund, there's funds that are used to, and is most often used for either improving or repairing structure. So when we had our renovation of the Onaijin at the centennial celebration, portions of the Eitaikyo fund were used for that. When the Nokotsudo columbarium was being built, Eitaikyo funds were used for that. I think even the garden, some of the Eitaikyo funds were used for that. And all of that is kind of structural. It's facility that houses, in a sense, the teachings of the Buddha, right? That, and we are part of that, that enjoy within these structures opportunity to hear and to share and enjoy the teachings of the Buddha. And by making sure that the facilities continue to exist into the future, it kind of assures that the teachings of the Buddha will continue. But I think at Eitaikyo we should also be mindful of the fact that somebody before us did that, so that we could enjoy the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha today. You see on these, like the lanterns, and I don't think it's on this anymore, but there are plaques, and some of the plaques are now on the boards in the back. But these inscriptions on these lanterns and the things that are here are expressions of gratitude for the people who donated these things. So you'll see names. Unfortunately, at the centennial, prior to the centennial, all the inscriptions are in Japanese. But at the centennial, the donations that were received for this specific purpose were inscribed in English and in Japanese, so that you see there are some that have both the Japanese and the English. But that was since the centennial that we did that. But so others, they gathered together their resources, and of course this temple was built by someone else. We didn't have to go out and build a temple. But not just at the Betsuin, before that, and well before that, 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, people did work to provide the Dharma for others. So here we are present, we're thinking about Eitaikyo moving forward, but we are also the recipients of that same kind of heart, that same compassion and care that others worked to assure that we would be able to receive the teachings of the Buddha. Many times we think of kodomo no tameni, and it's a kind of an important idea for the sake of the children. And that's looking forward, but we were children once that we received something from, right? So it's both thinking about the future and assuring that we can pass on the Dharma for the future generations, but that we are also the recipients of the efforts of others. That we are here able to hear the teachings of the Buddha, maybe not at this very moment, but it's hearing the teachings of the Buddha because of the work and the kindness and compassion of others. And so it is an expression of kindness and compassion that we benefit and are able to hear the teachings of the Buddha. When Shakyamuni Buddha, 2,500 years ago, when Shakyamuni Buddha was sharing his understanding of his experience of enlightenment, that was kind of like that same idea, right? He was sharing what he experienced so that others may be able to enjoy the same kind of understanding that he experienced. But it wasn't until after Shakyamuni Buddha that there were sutras that we kind of, at Eitaikyo, we try to make sure that we can continue, that we can pass on the sutras, the teachings of the Buddha. The Sanbutsuge, which we read this morning, comes from the larger Pure Land Sutra. It is the Bodhisattva Dhammakara before his teacher, the Buddha Lokeshvara Raja, expressing, praising the virtues of Lokeshvara Raja, and eventually asking for Lokeshvara Raja's help to fulfill this quest that he set out on, to be able to provide a means to which everyone might be able to resolve the difficulties that we cause and experience. So Eitaikyo, right, there are so many causes and conditions that come together that are expressed in the sutras, in the life of Shakyamuni Buddha, in the Sangha, in the temple members, the membership, and all of these things converge to make this time possible for us to hear the teachings of the Buddha. And hopefully it doesn't end with this, right? It's going forward too, that we work to provide a means through which others might enjoy, come into the Sangha, be able to hear the Dharma, and that people in the future will be able to enjoy. So again, it's not just us working hard so that others can enjoy. We have to remember that we are the recipients as well of what people have done, the work, the resources that others have used so that we are able to sit here and hear the teachings of the Buddha. In gratitude and appreciation, we're mindful of that. All of these causes and conditions that come together, that provide us with the opportunity to live our lives. As we look at this, the Hondo, right? This Hondo was built 1936, 1937. It's been renovated. I guess the major renovation was at the 75th anniversary when, I think it was at the 75th when this ceiling was put on. But the effort that was necessary to make this building possible, a tremendous effort in the middle, or at least during the Great Depression, when people gathered their resources together to build this temple. Eitaikyo, the title says, assuring the continued chanting of sutras, not just going forward, but also being mindful of what has come to us so that we might be able to hear the teachings of the Buddha and to receive that with gratitude and appreciation. As we listen to the teachings of the Buddha, listen to the sutras, we are also mindful of how that was brought to us so that we too could enjoy that. Okay, thank you very much. We'll conclude with Kansho. What's next? Huh? Ondokusan. Okay. If you could please rise and join in the singing of Gatha Ondokusan on page 76, I believe. Yeah. So 76. Yorai dai no ondokusan miyoko ni shite mo hozubeshi Chishiki no onnokumo hone o kudakite mo shasunbeshi. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you. Please be seated.
Okay, this concludes today's service. Are there any announcements?
Good morning. I have two announcements from the Betsuin's BWA, which is the Buddhist Women's Association. One of them is we're having a fundraiser. Coast District is hosting the Federation's BWA 47th 2024 conference. So we know it's a little bit in the future, but we thought we'd start our fundraising early since the price of everything has gone up in the last couple of years. So the date is Friday, November 18th, which is in a couple of weeks. You can order from Panda Express online, go to your local Panda Express, and then use the special code, which is 911278. So again, if you want to write it down, it's 911278. And if you have any questions, let us know, but we would appreciate your support of this fundraiser. And not to worry, if you miss this one, we'll have others. Okay. The second thing is that the Betsuin's BWA is also participating in the Nikkei Matsuri Artisan Fair, which will be held this coming Saturday, November 12th, from 10 to 3 o'clock at the Wesley Methodist Church, which is just down the block. The last time you may have seen us was probably at the 2019 Obon, so it's been a while since we've been able to share our crafts with you. So we're hoping that some of you will be able to join us, and we'll see you on Saturday, November 12th. Thank you.
Are there any other announcements? Okay, then that would conclude today's service. Thank you, Rinban, for your presentation of oh, I'm so confused. But anyway, thank you all for attending today's service, and hope to see you again next week. So please, if you'd like to come up for Kansho, you may do so.
Thanks, oh,
Yeah.
that's good. That's very nice.
Good, yeah. Yeah, he still has a little Japanese culture now.
Yeah, good, very good. I think so. Good morning, good morning.
Yeah, I know, so next week,
Good morning.
This morning's obituary had Glenn Tanabe
Oh,
finally passed on. So I think I'm gonna go to this one.
see you, Bob. Good seeing you. Good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning. Oh, yeah.
Ah, nice to see you.
Had our meeting yesterday too, and he was here.
Wow.
Good morning, good morning.